Wesley Carradine would remember the sound for the rest of his life. Not the crowd, not the overhead announcements, not the rolling suitcases or the distant roar of engines outside. The sound he remembered was smaller than all of that. It was the sound of his son's body hitting the floor. A soft, helpless thud that didn't belong in a place built for movement and travel. 1 second Jasper was standing beside him, rubbing sleep from his eyes and holding a toy plane, and the next second Jasper crumpled like someone had simply turned him off. Simone screamed his name so sharply it cut through the terminal noise. Wesley dropped to his knees and grabbed Jasper's shoulders. Jasper's eyes were open, but they weren't seeing anything. His lips turned pale, and Wesley felt his world narrow to one terrifying thought. His son wasn't breathing. The crowd reacted the way crowds always do. People stepped closer, then stepped back. Some froze. Some reached for their phones. A man in a suit pushed forward and said he knew CPR. Someone shouted for security. Someone shouted for a medic. Wesley's hands shook so badly he could barely keep them on Jasper's chest. He pressed his ear near Jasper's mouth, desperate to hear a breath. Nothing. Simone cried and begged Jasper to wake up. Wesley looked up, searching for help, and that's when he heard a voice behind the circle of strangers. Calm, certain, unafraid. Move. He's still here. People turned, confused. The voice belonged to a man who looked like he hadn't slept in a bed for years. Worn jacket, scuffed boots, a backpack that looked like it carried his whole life. A homeless man. Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Because this story is not only about a child collapsing in public, it's about the kind of help that comes from the last person you expect. It's about what happens when a man with everything is forced to accept that money can't save the people he loves. And it's about a man with nothing who still finds a way to do the right thing when the world has stopped doing right by him. Wesley Carradine did not believe in miracles. He believed in contracts, schedules, and guarantees. But that afternoon, he watched his son slip away in front of him. And he was about to learn that sometimes the only thing separating life from death is whether someone steps forward. The man's name was Marcus Ridley, but most people called him Mack. He didn't look like someone who should be trusted. He didn't look clean. He didn't look comfortable. He didn't look like he belonged in a terminal full of travelers. Earlier that afternoon, Simone had noticed him sitting near a wall outlet charging a phone that barely worked. Jasper had noticed him too. Jasper always noticed people. Jasper had asked his father why the man looked sad. Wesley had barely glanced at him. Don't stare, he had said. Mind your business. Now, as Wesley knelt over his motionless child, that same man was pushing through the crowd like he belonged there. He didn't ask permission. He didn't hesitate. He moved like a man who had seen this before and didn't have time for anyone's comfort. Mack dropped to his knees beside Jasper. He checked Jasper's mouth and airway like it was second nature. He tilted Jasper's head gently. He placed 2 fingers on Jasper's neck. His expression tightened for a moment. Not fear. Recognition. Mack looked up at Wesley and said, He's got a pulse. It's weak, but he's here. Simone let out a sob so loud people flinched. Wesley felt a surge of hope so sharp it hurt. But Mack's next words were urgent. He's not breathing right, Mack said. We don't have time to wait for the medics. The man in the suit protested. I'm trained, he insisted. Mack didn't argue. He didn't insult him. He didn't waste time proving himself. He simply said, Then help me. Mack guided the man's hands to the correct spot on Jasper's chest. Lower, Mack said. Not there. Here. The man hesitated, but Mack's voice was so firm he obeyed. Mack counted quietly, keeping rhythm. Wesley watched, helpless, as a stranger in a worn jacket took control of his son's life. Simone clutched Jasper's hand and whispered prayers. Security finally arrived, but when they saw Mack kneeling beside the child, they froze. They didn't know whether to pull him away or let him work. Mack didn't look up. He just kept counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then he leaned down close to Jasper's ear and whispered something that didn't sound medical at all. It sounded personal. Come back, kid, he whispered. Wesley's stomach twisted. He didn't know who this man was. But he knew one thing. Mack was Jasper's only chance. For a long moment, nothing happened. The terminal noise faded into the background. Even the overhead announcements felt distant. Wesley stared at Jasper's face and tried to will him into moving. He thought about all the times he had been too busy to play, all the times he had promised later, all the times he assumed he'd have more time. Now time was the one thing he didn't have. Simone begged Jasper not to leave. Mack listened for a breath. Nothing. Mack adjusted Jasper's position again and said, again. The man in the suit resumed compressions. Mack counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wesley felt tears rise, but he forced them down. He couldn't afford to break. Not now. Then suddenly Jasper coughed. Small, wet, weak, but real. Simone gasped like she had been underwater. Wesley's heart slammed against his ribs. Mack leaned closer. Jasper coughed again. Then Jasper inhaled, shaky and uneven, like someone climbing out of darkness. The crowd erupted. Someone shouted, "He's breathing." Someone clapped. Someone cried. The man in the suit leaned back, stunned, hands trembling. Mack stayed calm. He rolled Jasper gently onto his side, supporting his head and keeping his airway open. Jasper's eyes fluttered, unfocused, but he was alive. Security called for emergency responders again, this time with urgency that matched the moment. Wesley grabbed Simone's shoulder and whispered, "He's alive." Simone couldn't answer. She was crying too hard. Mack looked up at Wesley and said, "Don't let him sit up. Keep him still. He needs oxygen and monitoring." Wesley nodded, even though his brain was barely functioning. Emergency medical staff arrived quickly after that. They took over with equipment, oxygen, and practice speed. Jasper was placed on a stretcher. Simone tried to climb onto it with him, but they gently held her back and promised she could stay close. Wesley walked beside the stretcher like a man afraid the world might steal his son again if he blinked. But as Jasper was rolled away, Wesley turned his head one last time. He looked back at the gate. He looked back at the crowd. And he looked back at Mack. Mack was already stepping away. Not because he was guilty. Not because he was afraid. Because he had learned a long time ago that the world does not reward men like him for doing the right thing. Mack moved toward the wall again, toward invisibility. Wesley's chest tightened. He called out, "Wait." Mack paused. Wesley pushed through people and reached him. "What's your name?" Wesley asked, breathless. Mack hesitated. Then he said, "Mack." Wesley stared at him. "Mack," he repeated, as if saying it would make him real. Wesley swallowed hard. "Thank you," he said. Mack shrugged slightly. "I didn't do it for thanks," Mack replied. His voice was quiet, not bitter, just honest. Wesley asked, "Are you trained?" Mack's eyes flickered. He looked away for a moment, as if the answer was painful. Then he said, "I used to be." Wesley wanted to ask more, but security stepped in. One officer, taller and stern, looked at Mack with suspicion. "Sir," the officer said, "you need to move along." Wesley's jaw tightened. "He just saved my son," Wesley said sharply. The officer hesitated. "I understand," the officer said, "but he can't stay here." Mack didn't argue. He didn't fight. He just nodded and turned away, as if he had heard those words 1,000 times. Wesley watched him walk off. The man who had saved Jasper's life disappeared into the moving crowd like he had never existed. Wesley stood there for a second, stunned by how quickly people forgot. Then Wesley turned and hurried after his wife and son. Jasper was taken to a medical area inside the terminal. Doctors examined him. They monitored his breathing. They checked his heart. They asked Wesley and Simone questions about Jasper's health history. Simone answered through tears. Wesley answered like a man in shock. The doctor explained that Jasper had suffered a sudden episode that could happen without warning. They said Jasper was lucky. Simone gripped Jasper's hand as if she could anchor him to life. Wesley stood nearby, staring at his son's face, watching his chest rise and fall. Each breath felt like a gift. But Wesley's mind kept replaying the same moment. The moment the crowd froze. The moment Mack stepped forward. The moment Jasper came back. Hours passed. Jasper remained stable, though weak. Simone stayed by his side. Wesley paced. He checked his phone. He called his assistant to cancel meetings. He called family members. He answered messages. But none of it mattered. All of it felt distant. The only thing that mattered was the small boy on the stretcher. At some point, Simone looked up at Wesley and whispered, "You're thinking about him." Wesley didn't deny it. Simone continued, "The man who saved Jasper." Wesley nodded slowly. "I don't understand," Wesley admitted. Simone asked, "What don't you understand?" Wesley hesitated. Then he said the truth. "How someone like that ends up on the floor," he said quietly. Simone's eyes softened. That's what I've been trying to show you, she whispered. Wesley didn't answer, because Wesley Carradine was realizing something terrifying. The world didn't always reward good people. Sometimes it crushed them. Later that day, Jasper stirred. His eyelids fluttered. His mouth opened slightly. Simone leaned forward instantly. Jasper, she whispered. Jasper blinked slowly. His eyes struggled to focus. He looked at Simone, then at Wesley. His voice was weak, but it came out. Mom, he whispered. Simone cried again. I'm here, she said. Jasper's eyes shifted toward Wesley. Dad, Jasper whispered. Wesley leaned closer. I'm here, Wesley said, voice shaking. Jasper swallowed. Then he whispered something that made Simone freeze. He said, Where's the man? Wesley frowned. What man? Jasper's voice was faint. The man who told me to come back, Jasper whispered. Wesley felt his throat tighten. Simone covered her mouth. Jasper's eyes drifted again. I heard him, Jasper whispered. When it was dark, Wesley felt tears rise. He couldn't stop them. He turned his head away, ashamed of crying in front of strangers, but Simone didn't care. She held Jasper's hand and whispered, You're safe. Wesley stepped out into the hallway to breathe. His chest felt tight. He leaned against the wall, staring at the floor. And that's when the truth hit him. Jasper had asked for Mack. Not for a doctor. Not for a famous specialist. He asked for the homeless man. Wesley closed his eyes. He remembered Jasper asking earlier why the man looked sad. Wesley remembered his own voice saying, Mind your business. Wesley felt sick. Because if Mack had listened to Wesley's advice, Jasper might not be breathing right now. Wesley opened his eyes and made a decision. He was going to find Mack. Not to give him a quick thank you. Not to toss him money and walk away feeling generous. Wesley needed to find Mack because Jasper wanted him. And because Wesley needed to understand who he was. Wesley pushed away from the wall and started walking fast through the terminal, scanning every bench and corner. The terminal looked different now. The crowds were thinner. The lights felt harsher. The echo of footsteps sounded louder. Wesley walked past restaurants closing down, past tired employees wiping tables, past travelers sleeping with their necks bent awkwardly. Wesley searched every wall, every outlet, every quiet area. He didn't see Mack. His heart began to sink. Then Wesley spotted an older janitor pushing a cart. Wesley approached quickly. Excuse me, Wesley said. The janitor looked up. Wesley spoke fast. There was a man here earlier, Wesley said. A homeless man. Named Mack. Have you seen him? The janitor hesitated, then nodded slowly. He's usually around the quieter end, the janitor said. Wesley nodded. Thank you, he said, and walked faster. Wesley reached a calmer section where fewer gates were active. The noise was lower. The seating was emptier. And there, near a wall, Wesley saw him. Mack was sitting on the floor again, back against the wall, as if he belonged there. Wesley stopped a few feet away. He stared at Mack. Mack looked up instantly, eyes narrowing. He didn't look surprised. He looked cautious, like he expected trouble. Wesley swallowed. Mack, Wesley said. Mack's voice was flat. What? Wesley took a breath. My son woke up, Wesley said. Mack blinked. He did. Wesley nodded. He asked for you, Wesley said. Mack froze. His eyes flickered. Wesley continued. He said he heard you. He said you told him to come back. Mack stared at Wesley for a long moment. Then he looked away. His jaw tightened. Good, Mack said quietly. Wesley hesitated. Then he said, Come with me. Mack's eyes snapped back. No, Mack said immediately. Wesley raised his hands. I'm not trying to trap you, Wesley said quickly. Mack didn't soften. Wesley nodded. I understand why you'd think that, he said. Wesley paused, then added, But my son wants to see you. Mack didn't move. Wesley's voice cracked. He's alive, Wesley said. Because you were there. Mack stared at the floor. Wesley took a breath and decided to say the hardest truth. I walked past you earlier, Wesley admitted. Mack didn't respond. Wesley continued. I told my son not to stare. I told him to mind his business. Mack's jaw tightened. Wesley swallowed. And then you saved him, Wesley said. Mack looked up. His eyes were tired. Not angry, just tired. Mack said, Yeah. Wesley nodded. I don't know what kind of man that makes me, Wesley whispered. Mack didn't answer. Wesley continued. But I know what kind of man it makes you. Mack's eyes flickered. Wesley's voice shook. It makes you the reason my son is breathing, Wesley said. Mack shook his head slightly. Don't, he muttered. Wesley frowned. Don't what? Mack's voice was low. Don't act like the world suddenly cares, Max said. It doesn't. Wesley felt those words hit him. He nodded slowly. Then Wesley did something he had never done in his life. He sat down on the floor, right there, beside Mack. Mack stared at him, shocked. Wesley didn't care. People walked by. Some glanced. Some stared. Wesley ignored them. Wesley looked at Mack and said, "Tell me who you are." Mack didn't respond. Wesley continued, "Not your worst day. Not your mistakes. Who you are." Mack swallowed. He looked away. Then, after a long silence, he spoke. "I was a medic," Mack said. Wesley nodded. Mack continued, "I was good at it." Wesley's throat tightened. Mack stared at the floor. "I saved people," Mack said, "in places where nobody was supposed to survive." Wesley listened. Mack's voice grew quieter. "Then I came home," Mack said. Wesley nodded. Mack swallowed. "And I didn't know how to be here anymore," Mack whispered. Wesley's chest tightened. Mack continued. "I tried," Mack said. "I tried to be normal." Wesley didn't interrupt. Mack's voice was steady, but you could hear pain behind it. "I got a job," Mack said. "I tried therapy. I tried medication. I tried to sleep." Wesley stared at him. Mack shook his head. "But it doesn't always work," Mack said. Wesley whispered, "What happened?" Mack's eyes stayed on the floor. Then Mack said, "My daughter died." Wesley froze. Mack continued, voice cracking slightly. "She got sick," Mack whispered. "And I couldn't save her." Wesley felt his stomach drop. Mack swallowed. "I was trained to save people," Mack said. "But I couldn't save her." Wesley couldn't speak. Mack continued. "After that, everything fell apart." Wesley nodded slowly. Mack's voice grew quiet. "My wife left," Mack said. "My job slipped away. My friends stopped calling." Mack paused. Then he said, "And one day I realized nobody sees you when you fall." Wesley's eyes filled with tears. Mack glanced at him and looked away quickly, as if he didn't want to watch a rich man cry. Wesley swallowed. Then Wesley said quietly, "I see you." Mack didn't respond. Wesley repeated, "I see you. And I'm sorry it took my son almost dying for me to notice." Mack's jaw tightened. Wesley stood and extended his hand. Mack stared at it. Wesley said, "Come meet him." Mack hesitated. Then he stood slowly. He didn't take Wesley's hand. Not yet. But he followed. They returned to the medical area. Simone looked up and saw Mack. Her eyes widened. She stood quickly. She walked to him and hugged him without hesitation. Mack stiffened. Then, slowly, he relaxed. Simone pulled back, tears in her eyes. "You saved my baby," she whispered. Mack's voice was quiet. "I'm glad he's okay," he said. Jasper was awake. Weak, but awake. Jasper saw Mack and his eyes widened. Then Jasper smiled. A small smile, but real. Jasper whispered, "You came back." Mack swallowed. His throat tightened. He nodded. "Yeah," Mack whispered. "I came back." Jasper's voice was soft. "I heard you," Jasper said. Mack leaned closer. Jasper continued, "I was in the dark. And then I heard you say, 'You don't get to leave yet.'" Mack's eyes filled with tears. He nodded. Jasper lifted his small hand. Mack hesitated. Then he took it gently. Jasper squeezed. And in that moment, something happened that no amount of money could buy. Mack Ridley stopped being invisible. Not because the crowd applauded. Not because someone gave him a check. But because a child held his hand like he mattered. Simone cried quietly. Wesley stood behind her, eyes wet. And Wesley Carradine finally understood something. The world isn't fair. The world is random. And the only thing that makes it better is what people choose to do for each other. Mack stayed only a few minutes. Jasper was tired. Simone kissed Jasper's forehead and told him to rest. Jasper nodded, eyes closing. Mack stepped back carefully. Outside the room, Wesley followed him. Wesley took a breath and said, "I want to help you." Mack's shoulders tensed immediately. "No," Mack said. Wesley nodded. "I expected that," Wesley said. Mack's eyes stayed guarded. Wesley continued, "I'm not going to throw cash at you. I'm not going to film you. I'm not going to turn you into a story." Mack's expression shifted slightly. Wesley said, "I'm going to ask you one question." Mack nodded cautiously. Wesley asked, "What do you need?" Mack stared at him. Then Mack said quietly, "I want to stop feeling invisible." Wesley nodded. "Then that's what we'll do," Wesley said. Wesley paused, then said something that surprised even him. "Come eat with us," Wesley said. Mack blinked. Wesley added, "In public." Mack hesitated. Then he whispered, "People will stare." Wesley said, "Let them. They went to a restaurant inside the terminal. Not a private lounge. Not a luxury area. A normal place. Tables, chairs, menus, people. Wesley sat down. Simone sat down. Mack stood awkwardly. Wesley said, "Sit." Mack sat slowly. People stared. Wesley ignored them. Wesley ordered food. Real food. Mack didn't know what to order, so Wesley ordered something warm and filling. Mack ate slowly, like he didn't trust the meal to stay. Simone watched him with soft eyes. Wesley watched him too. Wesley finally said, "Thank you." Mack didn't respond right away. Then Mack said quietly, "I didn't save him for you." Wesley nodded. "I know," Wesley said. Mack continued, "I saved him because when I was at my worst, nobody saved me." Wesley's throat tightened. Simone reached across the table and placed her hand over Mack's. Mack flinched slightly, then relaxed. Simone whispered, "You deserve saving too." Mack's eyes filled with tears. He looked away quickly. Because men like Mack don't cry in public. They've learned the world punishes you for it. But Wesley saw it. And Wesley didn't judge it. Wesley realized something in that moment. He had spent his life believing that struggling people were lazy. But Mack wasn't lazy. Mack was wounded. Mack was grieving. Mack was surviving. Wesley looked at Mack and said, "I can't change your past. But I can change what happens next." Mack stared at him. Wesley continued, "Not because you saved my son, but because you're a human being." Mack's jaw tightened. He whispered, "People don't say that." Wesley nodded. "I know," he said. "That's the problem." The next day, Jasper was strong enough to travel safely. The family's flight was canceled, and arrangements were made for them to leave later. Wesley didn't care about schedules anymore. He cared about Jasper. He cared about Simone. And he cared about the man sitting quietly a few seats away, still looking like he was waiting for someone to tell him to leave. Wesley walked over and sat beside Mack. Mack didn't look up. Wesley said, "I'm going to get you a room." Mack's shoulders tensed. "No," Mack said again. Wesley nodded. "I know you're going to say no," Wesley said. Mack's eyes narrowed. Wesley continued, "But I'm not doing it like a handout. I'm doing it like a thank you, and like a human being." Mack stared at the floor. Wesley added, "And I'm doing it because my son asked for you." Mack's expression shifted. That mattered. Not Wesley's money. Not Wesley's status. Jasper's voice mattered. Mack's voice was quiet. "Kids don't know what they're asking for," he said. Wesley shook his head. "Jasper knows exactly what he's asking for," Wesley said. Mack finally looked at him. Wesley continued, "He asked for the man who saved him. He asked for the man who spoke to him when he couldn't speak back." Mack swallowed. Wesley said, "I can't undo what happened to you, but I can stop pretending it's normal." Mack looked away again. Wesley took a breath. "I'm going to do this in a way that gives you control," Wesley said. "You can say yes or no. You can walk away anytime." Mack's jaw tightened. Wesley continued, "But if you say yes, I'll make sure you have a place to sleep, food, and help." Mack whispered, "Help doesn't last." Wesley replied, "Then I'll make it last." Simone listened from a distance. She didn't interrupt. She watched Wesley with a mixture of relief and disbelief. Because Simone had been waiting for this version of her husband for years. A version that saw people. A version that felt something. A version that didn't treat life like a transaction. Later, Simone walked over and sat with them. Simone said softly, "Mack, you don't have to trust us right away." Mack looked at her. Simone continued, "But you saved our son, and we're not going to forget you." Mack's eyes flickered. He whispered, "People always forget." Simone shook her head. "Not this time," she said. Mack stared at her. Simone added, "Because Jasper won't let us." Mack's expression softened for the first time. Just slightly. But it was enough to show he was still human inside all that pain. Days later, Jasper recovered fully. He laughed again. He complained about being bored. He asked for pancakes. He asked to watch cartoons. And every day, Jasper asked one more question. "Is Mack okay?" Wesley would answer, "Yes." Even when Wesley wasn't sure yet, he answered yes. Because Wesley had made a decision. He wasn't going to let Mack disappear. Wesley arranged for Mack to have a small room nearby. Not a fancy hotel. Not a luxury place that would make Mack feel like he was being trapped. A simple room. Clean. Warm. Safe. Mack resisted at first. He stood outside the door like it was a trick. Like someone would jump out and accuse him of stealing. Wesley handed him a key. "It's yours," Wesley said. Mack stared at the key for a long time. Then he whispered, "I don't deserve this." Wesley answered, "That's not how it works." Mack went inside. He didn't immediately lie down. He didn't immediately relax. He walked around the room slowly, touching the bed, touching the bathroom door, touching the walls, like he needed proof that it was real. Later, Wesley returned with a bag of clothes. Mack didn't want it. Wesley didn't force it. He simply left it. Simone brought food. Mack didn't want it. Simone didn't argue. She simply sat and talked to him. Not like a charity worker. Like a person. Jasper called him on the phone one day, using Simone's phone. Jasper's voice was small and excited. "Hi, Mack," Jasper said. Mack froze. He didn't know how to talk to a child anymore. Jasper continued. "Dad said you're okay. I'm glad. Thank you for helping me come back." Mack's throat tightened. He whispered, "You're welcome, kid." Jasper said, "When I'm older, I want to help people too." Mack closed his eyes. He whispered, "Then you will." Weeks passed. Wesley and Simone returned home. Jasper went back to school. Life tried to return to normal. But something was different. Wesley was different. Wesley began noticing things he had ignored before. The homeless man outside the grocery store. The veteran with a sign. The tired cashier working late. Wesley didn't suddenly become a saint. He didn't become perfect. But he became awake. And it started with Mack. Wesley kept his promise. He helped Mack get medical care for old injuries. He helped Mack get counseling. He helped Mack get paperwork replaced. A new ID. A new phone. A bank account. Things most people don't think about until they lose them. Mack struggled with it. He didn't trust it. He expected it to disappear. Some days Mack didn't answer calls. Some days Mack stayed in the room and didn't open the door. Wesley didn't abandon him. Simone didn't abandon him. Jasper didn't forget him. One afternoon, months later, Jasper's family invited Mack to their home. Mack hesitated. He said no at first. Wesley didn't push. Then Jasper spoke. Jasper said, "Mack, please." Mack couldn't say no to that. Mack arrived wearing clean clothes. He looked uncomfortable. He stood at the doorway like he didn't know where to put his hands. Simone greeted him warmly. Wesley greeted him respectfully. Jasper ran up and hugged him without hesitation. Mack froze for a second. Then he hugged back. Jasper looked up and said, "You're not invisible anymore." Mack's throat tightened. Wesley turned away, pretending to clear his throat, because he didn't want Mack to see him crying. Mack looked around the home quietly. He didn't envy it. He didn't resent it. He just looked like a man seeing a world he thought he'd never touch again. Jasper brought Mack to his room. Jasper showed him toy planes, model trains, and drawings. Jasper said, "This is you," and held up a drawing. Mack looked at it. The drawing showed a small boy on the floor and a man kneeling beside him. Mack stared at it for a long time. Jasper said, "I didn't forget." Mack swallowed. He whispered, "Neither did I." Jasper asked, "Do you have kids?" Mack froze. Wesley and Simone held their breath. Mack looked at Jasper and said quietly, "I did." Jasper's face softened. Jasper asked, "Where are they?" Mack's voice was low. "My daughter is gone," Mack said. Jasper whispered, "I'm sorry." Mack nodded. Jasper stepped closer and hugged him again. Jasper said, "Then you can be here with us." Mack's eyes filled with tears. He didn't speak. He couldn't. Wesley watched from the doorway and felt something crack open inside him. Not pity. Not charity. Something deeper. Something like responsibility. After that day, Mack's life began to rebuild. Slowly. Not like in movies where everything changes overnight. Real change is slow. It's messy. It comes with setbacks. Mack had nightmares. Mack had bad days. Mack had moments where he wanted to disappear again. But now, he had people who noticed. Wesley helped him find work that made sense. Not a job that would break him. Not something that would overwhelm him. Something steady. Something meaningful. Mack began volunteering at a community center, helping teach basic first aid. He didn't talk much about his past. He didn't tell dramatic stories. He just showed people how to help. How to check a pulse. How to clear an airway. How to stay calm when seconds matter. Wesley attended one of those sessions quietly, sitting in the back. He watched Mack speak. He watched Mack stand tall. And Wesley realized something. Mack had never lost his worth. The world had just stopped giving him a place to use it. Jasper grew stronger too. Jasper became more confident. Jasper became more interested in helping others. Wesley began spending more time with his son, not because he felt guilty, but because he finally understood what mattered. Wesley began turning off his phone at dinner. He began showing up for school events. He began taking Jasper to the park. Simone watched it all and felt relief. Because she had always believed Wesley could be this man. He just needed a reason strong enough. And as strange as it sounded, that reason had come in the form of a homeless man named Mack, sitting near a wall outlet, ignored by the world. Mack didn't ask to be part of their lives. Mack didn't chase them. Mack didn't beg. Mack simply stepped forward when a child needed help. And that one moment had rewritten 3 lives. 1 year later, Jasper's family invited Mack over again. Jasper ran up and hugged him. Mack hugged back, more naturally this time. Jasper handed him a small gift. A toy train. Jasper said, "It's for you." Mack blinked. "For me?" Jasper nodded. "So you remember," Jasper said, "that you're not alone." Mack's throat tightened. He took the train carefully. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he smiled. A real smile. Not forced. Not polite. Real. Wesley watched and felt his eyes burn again. Wesley walked over and said quietly, "Thank you." Mack looked at him. Wesley continued, "Not just for saving Jasper. For showing me what I was." Mack's expression was calm. He said, "What were you?" Wesley swallowed. He said, "A man who thought money was the same thing as love." Mack didn't argue. He just nodded. Wesley whispered, "I'm trying to do better." Mack replied, "Keep trying." And that is the part of the story most people don't talk about. The miracle isn't only that Jasper lived. The miracle is what happened after. The miracle is that Wesley Carradine didn't just write a check and walk away. He didn't treat Mack like a story to tell at dinner parties. He treated him like a human being. And Mack, for the first time in years, allowed himself to be seen. Because being seen is terrifying when you've been invisible for so long. Being seen means people can judge you again. Being seen means people can hurt you again. But being seen also means you can live again. Jasper's collapse was the moment the world stopped. Mack's hands were the moment it restarted. And Wesley's choice was the moment it changed direction. So here's the real question. Do you think Mack deserved help even before he saved Jasper? Or do you think the world only rewards people once they prove they're useful? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the story, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notifications.